growing my kingdom in the world. You know, by the grace of God, God is still making disciples out of us. And it happens when we encounter Jesus, when we come into relationship with Jesus. And this happens in all kinds of ways, but our understanding of who we are changes when we know who Jesus is. Just like Peter got a new name and a new job, we also change in relationship to Jesus. So when I was working at Camp Mishawaka, some of you might know where that is. It's over in Fairview, and it's a Lutheran camp. And I worked there a few summers ago, and it was a wonderful experience. And that summer, there was a young man named Brandon. And tomorrow he will start his first day of seminary. And in order to kind of celebrate that event, the director of that camp interviewed Brandon. And I thought this was really compelling. So I'm going to read to you this little part here from the blog. CJ asked Brandon, "How have you grown as a person during your time at camp?" And Brandon said this: "Working at camp has really helped me to understand my identity. Growing up, I was a white kid in a black neighborhood, yet I am Native American. I was always trying to figure out, am I white? Am I black? Am I Native American? This caused an inner conflict of identity in regards to how I felt the world perceived me and how I perceived myself. My employment with Living Water Ministries has given me the space to discover my true identity as a child of God." I remember the former presiding Bishop Mark Hansen also giving a sermon once in which he talked about the identity crisis that young people especially face in our society today. Just like Brandon, who's wondering, am I white? Am I black? Who am I? I don't understand where I come from and who I am. And somehow for Brandon, it was in this space of camp that he figured out something in relationship to this community that bore Christ, that was for him the sign of Christ's love and grace in the world. He was able to figure out that his identity wasn't based on what the world said about him, but what Jesus said about him, and who that depth of identity carried him, and now he's willing to spread the good news by going to seminary. Bishop Hansen talked about this inner crisis of identity, and he said that these identities attempt to enslave us. And I think as a young person you can imagine the cafeteria at high school, right? And you've got one table of jocks and one table of emo kids and one table of goth kids and one table of geeks. And that seems like, when I remember at that age, that defined everything I was, right? And it's the same thing actually for adults. We get these identities placed on us. Like if you become disabled, right? In our case, then your identity is only about that. And Christ says that's not true. Your identity is as a child of God, and that runs so much deeper than what the world might place on us. So this is Brandon still talking, the guy who's just starting seminary. "When kids come to camp, the community that forms allows them to be their true selves. As I learned a lot about my identity as a camper and a staff person, I believe all campers are given the same opportunity to learn who they are in the context of who God is in their lives. Campers are encouraged, challenged, and accepted into a community that is a reflection of Christ's love and grace. It is a powerful experience that truly impacts lives. It certainly has impacted mine." I thought this was such a beautiful testimony to what camp and essentially what Christ and the church have meant to Brandon. Because Brandon didn't have to create his own identity, right? He found his identity in relationship to these people at camp, and especially to Christ, to the one who calls all of us, gives us a new name, and tells us we still have work to do in the world. The thing also I discovered about identity at camp is that you realize how different you are than other people. So we had some other of my fellow staff members who were such extroverts. They wanted to be around people 24/7. And here I was, every time I could, running off into the woods to go for a hike, right? So we have all these people with very different gifts, different needs, different ways that they lit up and were able to do God's work. And what they love, their passions. And that's what the Apostle Paul is talking about too in our passage today, when he says, "For as in one body we have many members, and not all members have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members of another." I think the point in this is that we all have different gifts, and without that, we don't have this rich tapestry of community. We need each other. We need each other's differences, and we need to be in a community where we're allowed to be ourselves. And what Brandon was witnessing to is that love makes us blossom. Love makes the garden grow in ways that are good for everyone. And this is how we know that God is around, that God dwells in our Christian communities, and that God is bringing something new to birth through them. So, Jesus' identity is as the Messiah, right? And our identities are from Jesus. We learn that we're children of God. And it doesn't mean we lose our identities, you know. You will still have Norwegian heritage, and Brandon will still be a Native American who grew up being white in a black neighborhood. But at the end of the day, the bedrock of our identity is in this relationship that we have with Jesus, where God at the baptismal font says, "You are a child of God. I have created you and I have blessed you to be a blessing in the world." And this is the good news of the gospel. Like Peter, we get a new name and we have a mission in the world. So I discovered this morning, I ended last time with a song, so we might as well do that again. I discovered a song, and Bill might have to help me out here. It's, if anybody asks me who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks me who I am, just tell them I'm a child of God. I started a little low. Okay, so we'll try it again together. Did you hear the words? If anybody asks me who I am, just tell them I'm a child of God. This is an African American spiritual. All right, we'll do a little higher. Mom, give us a pitch.
No, just keep where you were.
All right. If anybody asks me who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks me who I am, just tell them I'm a child of God. Let's do it again. If anybody asks me who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks me who I am, just tell them I'm a child of God. We're lucky that we have these African American spirituals that help us remember who we are and who all of us are. And so, as we realize that in the world there are all kinds of stereotypes that the world wants to throw on us, and I think in Ferguson, Missouri right now, this is what's going on too. All kinds of stereotypes being thrown around and people being stripped of their real identity as full people, as real human beings who have been loved by God, called by God, named by God, and sent out into the world to be a blessing. So, remember that song. I hope it sings in your hearts in the coming week. And for the identity we have in Christ, I say thanks be to God.
Amen.